one of the important topic in pharmacology, that is drugs which are acting or drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure. Drugs used in congestive cardiac failure. Drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure. What topic is drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure? Before discussing about the congestive drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure, let us discuss about what is cardiac failure. Before discussing about the cardiac failure, let us discuss the normal heart. Let us consider this is a normal graph. Here it includes end diastolic volume, whereas on y-axis it includes contractility. Contractility is nothing but the cardiac output. Here that is on x-axis, it is on y-axis, and here it is on x-axis. Now, normally the end diastolic volume of normal heart is 140 ml. Let us consider it is 140 ml. When it is normally 140, end diastolic volume is 140 ml, the contractility is, let us consider it will be 70 beats per minute. What is end diastolic volume means? The volume of the blood which is present in the ventricles just before the contraction of ventricles is called end diastolic volume. The volume which is present in the ventricle just before contraction of ventricles is called end diastolic volume. Now, normally the graph can be seen like this. The graph can be seen like this, that is at 140 mm Hg, 140 ml, this is the graph, that is at 140 ml, 70 beats per minute. This is a normal range, but because of some external character or because of some abnormalities in the heart, let us consider first abnormality, that is over outflow of sympathetic outflow, over exaggeration of sympathetic outflow. Now, how it can affect the sympathetic outflow, how this sympathetic outflow can affect the heart means, now let us consider this is the left ventricle, and this is the aorta, and these are the arteries, and let us consider this is the right ventricle and this is the left ventricle. Now, these are the arterioles and these are the venules. In between it consists of capillaries. These are the capillaries. Now, if in case sympathetic outflow is more, let us consider this is our central nervous system, and if there is sudden drop in cardiac output, sympathetic outflow will get exaggerated. Sympathetic system will get stimulated, then there will be a sympathetic outflow. Let's consider this is a sympathetic outflow. Now, this sympathetic outflow will result in constriction of these venules, smooth muscles which are present in the venules. It will act on the venules and constrict the smooth muscles which are present in the venules. As these smooth muscles are contracted, the flow from these ventricles towards the right ventricle will get decreased, whereas if the blood flow from this ventricle or blood flow from this venous system is decreased, then the blood flow towards the right atrium to this right ventricle will get decreased. Blood flow will get decreased. So if the blood flow will get decreased, ultimately the cardiac output will get decreased. If the blood flow is decreased, then the filling of the blood inside the ventricles will get decreased. That is, end diastolic volume will get decreased. End diastolic volume will get decreased. Ultimately, stroke volume will get decreased. This is one condition because of over outflow of sympathetic nervous system. This is one condition which results in bradycardia. That is, there will be decrease in heartbeat that results in bradycardia. It results in bradycardia. This is the first condition. So, this is the first condition. If we discuss about the second condition, that is overstimulation of vagus nerve, or before discussing about overstimulation of vagus nerve, role of renin angiotensin aldosterone system. Renin angiotensin aldosterone system. Here, in renin angiotensin aldosterone system, it increases the cardiac output. That is, there is involvement of angiotensin 2. That is angiotensin 2. Because of this presence of angiotensin 2, there will be constriction of these arterioles. Then this left ventricle will get contracted. As a result, the cardiac output will get increased. That is, cardiac output will get increased and end diastolic volume will get increased. Ultimately, stroke volume will get increased. Then there will be resulting in a tachycardia. These are the two conditions which results in abnormalities in the heart. That is, now coming back to here, in normal person the end diastolic volume is 140 ml and the contractility is 70 ml, 70 beats per minute. Now in this case, in the abnormality, the graph will be like this. The graph will be like this. As the end diastolic volume will, if the end diastolic volume will get increased, then the contractility should be increased. But in abnormalities, the contractility will get decreased. That is, here let us consider it is 200 ml. Let us consider it is 200 ml. Now, if it is 200 ml, here this is 70 beats per minute. It will decrease to 60, 50, 40, 30. It will decrease to 30. It will decrease to 30. At 200 ml, the heartbeat will be 30. In this way, this is the normal. This is a normal graph of our heart, and this is a failure heart. This is a normal heart and this is a failure heart. That is, as the end diastolic volume will be increased, then contractility will be decreased. Now our main motto of these drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure is, as the end diastolic volume will be increased, the contractility should be increased. The main motto of these drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure is to increase the contractility with simultaneous of end diastolic volume. That is, the drugs should increase this contractility. That is, cardiac output should be increased. Cardiac output should be increased. This is the main motto of the drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure. Now, what are the conditions which results in cardiac failure means? What are the conditions which results in cardiac failure? There are three important conditions which results in congestive cardiac failure. What are the three important conditions means? There are three important conditions which results in cardiac failure. First one is increase in preload. Increase in preload, this is the first condition, and second condition is increase in afterload. Increase in afterload, and this is the first condition and this is the second condition, and third condition is increase in the resistance. These are the three conditions which results in congestive cardiac failure, that is increase in preload and increase in afterload and increase in resistance. Preload is nothing but the volume of the blood which is present in the ventricles just before the contraction, and it is also called end diastolic volume. Afterload is nothing but it is the resistance against which the heart should pump the blood, and here is this is the resistance of heart. Now, if we discuss, normally these are the conditions which results in congestive cardiac failure. If we discuss about the pharmacology which is involved in congestive cardiac failure, how the pharmacology is involved and what type of pharmacology is involved means, now let us discuss pharmacology. The pharmacology which is involved in congestive cardiac failure. The pharmacology which is involved in congestive cardiac failure is, the main motto, first priority is, the first one is the drugs should increase the preload. Drugs should increase the preload. This is the first criteria. Drugs should increase the preload. This is the first criteria. And second criteria is drugs which are used to increase the afterload. Drugs should increase the afterload. Drugs which are used to increase the afterload can be given for this congestive cardiac failure. And third type of drugs is, these are the important class of drugs, that is positive inotropic drugs. These are the three class of drugs which can be administered in case of congestive cardiac failure, that is the drugs which increases the preload, and the drugs which increases the afterload, and the drugs which are used as positive inotropic drugs. Positive inotropic drugs are nothing but which are used to increase the contractility, that is cardiac output or contraction of these ventricles. So these are the three types of drugs which are used. These are the basics that are. These are the three types of drugs which can be used in congestive cardiac failure. That is, the drugs which are helpful in increasing the preload. If the preload is increased, end diastolic volume. If the preload is increased, then end diastolic volume will be increased. Then cardiac output will get increased. Then stroke volume will get increased. Then contractility will be increased. In this way, it will be helpful. That is, if the afterload is average, now here the drugs which decreases the afterload. It is this one is first drugs which increases the preload, and next one is drugs which are used to decrease the afterload, and drugs these are these are the third class of drugs are inotropic drugs. Now here if we decrease the afterload, the venous return will be increased. Venous return will be increased. When venous return is increased, end diastolic volume will be increased. As end diastolic volume will be increased, cardiac output will be increased, and stroke volume will be increased, and contractility will be increased. In this way, it will be useful. And the main purpose of this positive inotropic drugs are that these are used to increase the contractility. Increase the contractility. This is the main importance of these three classes of drugs, that are drugs which are used to increase the preload, and drugs which are used to decrease the afterload, and drugs which are used that are positive inotropic drugs. Now coming to the another class of drugs which comes under positive inotropic drugs, that are angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. These are the special class of drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure, and these comes under these drugs which increases the preload. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors are nothing but these are the drugs which increases the preload, and these are also special class of drugs which can be administered in case of congestive cardiac failure. Now this is about the pharmacology, basics of pharmacology, and now let us discuss about angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. Angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. Now, before discussing about the angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, that are ACE inhibitors, before discussing about the ACE inhibitors which are used in congestive cardiac failure, a student should know what are angiotensin converting enzymes. Now let us consider this is our circulatory system, and these are our lungs, and this is our heart, and this is our adrenal gland, and This is the nephron. Here this is a nephron. And here this is the glomerulus. And here this is a liver. Now, before discussing about the ACE inhibitors, we should remember what are ACEs. These are angiotensin converting enzymes. Angiotensin converting enzymes. Now, let us consider a patient who met with an accident and there is a severe blood loss and the blood pressure inside the body will get decreased. Then, whenever the blood pressure inside the body will get decreased, then the blood flow from this circulatory system towards the kidney will get decreased. Blood flow towards the circulatory system, blood flow from the circulatory system towards the kidney will get decreased. Whenever the blood from this circulatory system towards the kidney will get decreased, then these special kind of smooth cells will get special kind of epithelial cells will get modified into cuboidal cells. They convert into cuboidal cells, and here we know that this is a DCT, and on surface of DCT these are called macula densa cells, and these two types of cells will secrete special type of enzyme called that is renin. It will secrete the renin, and this renin will be moving into the liver, and inside the liver it converts into renin will get converts into angiotensinogen. Now, this angiotensinogen will get converted into angiotensin 1. That is angiotensin 1. Now, angiotensin 1 is secreted in the liver. Again, from liver, this angiotensin 1 will get secreted back into this. Let us consider this is angiotensin 1. It is coming back into the circulatory system. Now, this angiotensin 1 should convert into angiotensin 2. It must convert into angiotensin 2. This is angiotensin 1 and this is angiotensin 2. Now, how this angiotensin 1 can convert into angiotensin 2 means there is a special enzyme, that is angiotensin converting enzyme. Angiotensin converting enzymes. This angiotensin converting enzyme is a special enzyme which is present in the endothelial cells of alveoli. These are present in the endothelial cells of alveoli. It helps in conversion of angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. Now, whenever this angiotensin 2 is secreted out, it will show its action on heart. That means it will increase the preload and it increases the cardiac output and will increase the stroke volume. As increasing the cardiac output and stroke volume, now whatever the blood pressure which is dropping, as there is increase in cardiac output, stroke volume, here cardiac output, stroke volume and end diastolic volume will get increased and heartbeat will get increased. As heartbeat will get increased, the blood pressure will be maintaining, and in this way the blood pressure which will be maintaining, and it is also called renin angiotensin aldosterone system. So in this way angiotensin converting enzymes are helpful in converting the angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2. Now, angiotensin inhibitors are used for congestive cardiac failure. If there is high risk of congestive cardiac failure, that is, if a person is suffering from tachycardia, then angiotensin inhibitors, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors will be given. Now, why these angiotensin converting inhibitors are given means, if we discuss about the uses, what are the uses of angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors means, it will decreases the preload, and it will decrease the cardiac remodeling. And third one is, whenever these angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors are given, then it will decreases the risk of myocardial infarction. And these angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors can be also given as antihypertensive drugs. And these angiotensin converting enzymes inhibitors can be also given for the person who is suffering from diabetic nephropathy. These are some uses of angiotensin converting enzymes. Now, what are the drugs which comes under angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors means, there are 5 drugs. There are 5 drugs which comes under angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors. First one is captopril. Captopril is the first drug. Next one is enalapril. This is a second drug. And next one is lisinopril. Captopril, enalapril and lisinopril, and other one is ramipril. And coming to the last one is fosinophil. These are the 5 class of drugs which are included under angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, which are used in congestive cardiac failure. That is, first one is captopril. This is the first one, that is captopril. And second one is enalapril. And third one is lisinopril. And fourth one is ramipril. And fifth one is fosinopril. When compared to all these 5 drugs, the first line drug which can be used is captopril. This is a majorly used drug in case of congestive cardiac failure as ACE inhibitors. Now, they have discussed about the uses of captopril, and there are certain side effects of captopril. let us discuss about side effects. CAP. This is a spelling of captopril. 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 Now coming to the side effects of captopril. First one is C for cough. Cough is the first side effects, and next one is A for angioedema. This is the second type of side effect of captopril, and next one is P for proteinuria. Is loss of proteins, and T for taste change. T for taste change, and O for hypotension. O for hypotension, and P for pregnancy. That means a person who is or a woman who is pregnant should not take this captopril. And R for rashes. I for increasing potassium levels and increase in renin levels. Increase in potassium levels and increase in renin levels. And L for lowering of aldosterone and lowering of angiotensin. These are some side effects of captopril, that is ACE inhibitors. And these are the ACE inhibitors, and while studying these ACE inhibitors, there are another class of drugs also should be studied, that are angiotensin receptor blockers. Angiotensin receptor blockers. What are angiotensin receptor blockers? Angiotensin receptor blockers are the blockers of angiotensin which are present on heart, and it may present on, let us consider, on adrenal medulla. This normally angiotensin will bind to this receptor and will stimulate this receptor and will increase the cardiac output. Now normally angiotensin receptor blockers are blocking these angiotensin receptors. Will block these angiotensin receptors. Whenever these angiotensin receptors are blocked, this angiotensin, or that is angiotensin 2, cannot get attached to this angiotensin receptors and cannot increases the cardiac output. In this way, these angiotensin receptor blockers and ACE inhibitors having the same function. Now, what are the drugs which comes under angiotensin receptor blockers? Means angiotensin receptor blockers. Tablet losartan and tablet Candor, Cancerton. These are the two drugs that are losartan and candorsertan. They are the two drugs which are used as angiotensin receptor blockers, which block the receptors of angiotensin angiotensin 2 on heart and special type of tissues, which will block this angiotensin receptor and do not stimulate this angiotensin receptor and do not increase the cardiac output. In this way, these angiotensin receptor blockers and angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors having the same function. Now, whenever these angiotensin receptor blockers are used, it will show its effects on zona glomerulosa. Whenever it is showing on effect on zona glomerulosa, there will be sudden decrease of aldosterone. It will suddenly decrease the aldosterone, and we know that there are receptors of aldosterone on hypothalamus. Let us consider this is a receptor of aldosterone on hypothalamus, and it will block this receptor, and function of hypothalamus will get decreased. It inhibits the hypothalamus. In this way, angiotensin receptor blockers are used in congestive cardiac failure. Now, we have discussed about angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors and angiotensin receptor blockers. Now, let us discuss about the role of beta blockers in congestive cardiac failure. Role of beta blockers. Role of beta blockers in congestive cardiac failure. Role of beta blockers in congestive cardiac failure. Now, these beta blockers are classified into two forms. One is selective beta blocker and other one is non-selective beta blockers. This is selective beta blocker and other one is non-selective beta blocker. That is selective beta blockers and non-selective beta blockers. These selective beta blockers will work on only beta 1 receptors. Whereas non-selective beta blockers will work on beta 1 as well as beta 2 receptors. Beta 1 and beta 2 receptors. Examples for selective beta blocker is propranolol. This is an example for selective beta blocker. And example for non-selective beta blocker is metoprolol. Metoprolol, and there is a special class of drug, metoprolol. Now here it is metoprolol. How these beta blockers are used in congestive cardiac failure means, here let us consider this is our heart, and here this is the SA node, and here this is the AV node, and this is the Purkinje system. Now there are special beta receptors present on SA node and AV node, and Purkinje fibers and other myocardial cells. Now these beta blockers are blocking these beta receptors. As a result, they do not increase the cardiac output, they will decrease the cardiac output. This, we know that this cardiac failure may be because of tachycardia or maybe bradycardia. Now, there is another special class of drug, that is carvedilol. Carvedilol is a special class of drug, a special drug which will act on alpha 1 receptors, adrenergic receptors, and it will work on beta 1 adrenergic receptors, and it will work on beta 2 adrenergic receptors. It will work on alpha 1 adrenergic receptors, and it will work on beta 1 adrenergic receptors, and it will work on beta 2 adrenergic receptors, and it helps in decreasing the contractility. Now, in this way, beta blockers are used. Now, there is diuretics. Role of diuretics in congestive cardiac failure. What are diuretics? Example for diuretics are thiazides, and second one is loop diuretics. These are the two diuretics, and the main motto of this these thiazides and loop diuretics is it maintains the increases the water level and solute concentration. As a result, the water content inside the blood will get increased and will increase the end diastolic volume, and will helps in congestive cardiac failure. In this way, the loop diuretics and thiazides are useful, and there are vasodilators. Direct vasodilators. Direct vasodilators. The role of vasodilators in congestive cardiac failure. There are two types of vasodilators, that are arteriolodilator and other one is vasodilator, or that is venodilator. Arteriodilator and venodilator. Now, arteriodilators are the drugs which will dilate the arterioles. As a result, whenever the arterioles are dilated, the blood from the arterioles towards the ventricles will get increased and will increase the cardiac output. Or whenever the venodilators are given, it will increase the diameter of veins and venous return will get increased. Now, the tablet that is used as arteriolodilator is isosorbate dinitrate. Isosorbate dinitrate is a tablet which is used for arteriolodilator, and coming to the tablet used as venodilator is hydrazine. There are two types of tablets which can be used as direct vasodilators. Now, we have discussed about role of angiotensin converting enzymes and the role of angiotensin receptor blockers, and we have completed role of diuretics, and we have completed role of vasodilators. Now, let us discuss about the role of positive ionotropic drugs. Role of positive inotropic drugs in congestive cardiac failure. Before discussing about the positive inotropic drugs which are used in congestive cardiac failure, now let us again discuss about the basics of congestive cardiac failure. In case of, with respect to the cardiac output, with respect to the cardiac output, let us discuss. First class is this is the first class. Under the first class, it includes high output congestive cardiac failure, high output congestive failure or high output cardiac failure. We are discussing in case of cardiac output, that is first one is high output cardiac failure and the second one is low output cardiac failure. Low output cardiac failure. This is first class, that is high output cardiac failure and low output cardiac failure. What are high output cardiac failures and low output cardiac failures means? Let us consider our heart. Now, this is a SA node and this is the AV node. If there is overstimulation of vagus nerves, or if there is, now let us consider if there is overstimulation of vagus nerve, now there will be vasoconstriction. There will be vasoconstriction and the flow, that is venous return towards the right ventricle will get increased. Whenever the venous return is increased, end diastolic volume will get increased. Whenever the end diastolic volume will get increased, cardiac output will get decreased and stroke volume will get increased and heart rate will get increased. In this way, it is called high output cardiac failure. Coming to the low output cardiac failure, and here it is the main news. Because of overstimulation of sympathetic outflow, now it will constrict the, here it will dilate and here it will constrict the venules. As a result, the blood flow towards the right atrium or right ventricle will get decreased. Whenever there will be decrease of cardiac output, and here there will be decrease of end diastolic volume and cardiac output will get decreased and stroke volume will get decreased and heart rate will get decreased. In this way, it is called low output failure. This is the first class. Coming to the second class, in second class, under second class, the first category is left ventricle failure. First category is left ventricle failure, and second one is right ventricular failure, and third category is biventricular failure. Left ventricular failure, right ventricular failure, and biventricular failure. Now, First, let us discuss about left ventricular failure. Let us consider this is the left ventricle, and this is the aorta. Now, if there is any congestions in this left ventricle, then the contractility will get decreased. Whenever the contractility will get decreased, the flow from this ventricle towards the aorta will get decreased. As a result, they will get decreased, and it results in a condition called pulmonary edema. In case of left ventricle failure, it results in pulmonary edema. This is left ventricle failure, and next one is right ventricular failure. Let us consider this is the right ventricle, and this is pulmonary arch. Whenever there is abnormalities in this right ventricle, it results in condition called generalized edema. Generalized edema. This is second condition, and third condition is biventricular failure. Here this is the heart. Now there will be failing of these two ventricles, that is left ventricle will be failed and right ventricle will be failed. In this condition, it results in a condition called cardiac failure. These are the three conditions. If there is left ventricular failure, it results in pulmonary edema. If there is right ventricular failure, it results in generalized edema. If there is biventricular failure, it results in cardiac failure. This is a second class of classification. And coming to the third class, in third class, it again classified into two forms. First one is forward failure, and second one is backward failure. What is forward failure and what is backward failure means? In forward failure, let us consider left ventricle. Whenever this left ventricle is contracted, the blood should flow towards the atria. It should flow towards the aorta. Now, in forward failure, it fails to pump the blood in forward direction. It will fail to pump the blood in forward direction, that is called forward failure. And what is backward failure means? Let us consider same, this is a left ventricle, and whenever it is contracting, it should pass its blood towards the aorta. Now, this left ventricle will get blood from this atria. Here there will be abnormalities in closing of this ventricle, closing of this mitral valves and tricuspid valves. It results in backward failure, and this is a third class of classification. And there is another class of classification, that is fourth class of classification. Again, it is divided into diastolic failure, and other one is systolic failure. What is diastolic failure and systolic failure means? Diastolic failure is a failure during the case of relaxation, whereas systolic failure is failure during the case of contraction. It is during the relaxation and it is during the contraction. In this way, this is the overview of congestive cardiac failure. Now, there are main three classes of positive inotropic drugs. What are the three classes of positive inotropic drugs? Means there are three classes of positive inotropic drugs. There are specially three classes of positive inotropic drugs are used in congestive cardiac failure. The first type is digitalis. Digitalis is special class of drugs which are used as positive inotropic drugs, and second one are sympathomimetic drugs. Sympathomimetic drugs. It includes dopamine and dobutamine. Dopamine and dobutamine. Digitalis includes digoxin and digitoxin. Digitalis includes digoxin and digitoxin. Sympathomimetic drugs includes dopamine and dobutamine. And another class of drugs which are used as positive inotropic drugs are phosphodiesterase inhibitors. Phosphodiesterase inhibitors. What are phosphodiesterase inhibitors? We will explain in next class. That is next upcoming lectures. It includes amantadine. It includes amrinone and milrinone. These are the three special class of drugs which can be used in positive inotropic drugs, which are used as positive inotropic drugs. Now, the main motto of positive inotropic drugs is to increase the contractility of the heart. Increases the contractility, that is, cardiac output should get increased. Before discussing about how the contractility will be increased, let us discuss about normal contraction of the heart muscles. Now, let us consider this is one cell. Let us consider this is one cell, and it undergoes during the depolarization phase. There is voltage sensitive calcium channels. These are voltage sensitive calcium channels. During the depolarization phase, after the depolarization, when it is reaching the ending of depolarization phase, these voltage sensitive calcium channels will be opened. As a result, there will be influx of calcium. Excess amount of calcium will get accumulated inside the cell. Now, excess amount of calcium will be accumulated inside the cell. Now, this extra amount of calcium will triggers the special structure, that is this is sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarcoplasmic reticulum. Inside it consists of calcium, whenever there is extra amount of calciums, Now this calcium will enter inside the sarcoplasmic reticulum and will trigger this sarcoplasmic reticulum. Now let us consider this is a sarcomere. These are light chains and in between these heavy chains. Now there should be relation between the heavy chains and light chains, but it is blocked by special proteins that are tropomyosins and as well as troponins. These are blue color structures are troponins and red color one is tropomyosin. Whenever there is extra amount of calcium which is entered into the cell, it will comes out from this sarcoplasmic reticulum. It will come out from the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Whatever the calcium which is entered out from the sarcoplasmic reticulum will bind to this, it will get binded to this troponin. Whenever it is binded with the troponin, this troponin and tropomyosin will be moving out from this active site. As a result, these heavy chains will be attached to the light chains, and as a result there will be contraction of these muscles. In this way, normal contraction can be seen, and after the contraction there should be relaxation, that is repolarization. And here let us consider this is sodium potassium ATPase. It involves in efflux of sodium and influx of potassium, and there is another transporter, that is sodium potassium transporter, sodium calcium transporter. This is calcium transporter. From this calcium transporter, after the contraction there should be relaxation, that is calcium will be moving outside. There will be moving of the calcium outside, and after the moving of calcium outside there will be detachment of these heavy chains from these light chains, and ultimately there will be relaxation. In this way there will be contraction and relaxation in smooth muscles of heart. And if we first let us discuss about how the digitalis will work. First we will discuss about digitalis. Let us discuss about digitalis. Before discussing about digitalis, how the mechanism of digitalis, digitalis includes two drugs that are, it includes digoxin and digitoxin. Digoxin and digitoxin, these are the two drugs which comes under digitalis, and this is more accurate when compared to digitoxin. It is more used when compared to digitoxin, and there is short half-life and long half-life. There is short half-life and long half-life. Now it can be excreted through the kidneys, and it can be excreted through the gastrointestinal tract. In this way it includes digoxin and digitoxin. How this digoxin and digitoxin will work? Let us discuss about the mechanism of digoxin and digitoxin. How this digitalis will work means, now we know that this is calcium transporter which is present on every cell membrane. Now the main function of this calcium transporter is to transport the calcium outside. To transport the calcium outside. And what does this digitalis will work means, it will inhibit the sodium potassium ATPase. Now this is sodium potassium ATPase. This digitalis will work on sodium potassium ATPase here. It will inhibit the sodium potassium ATPase. Sodium potassium ATPase will get inhibited. Digitalis will inhibit the sodium potassium ATPase. Ultimately, there is no efflux of sodium and influx of potassium. So, if there is no efflux of sodium, there will be sodium accumulation inside the cells. Sodium will get accumulated inside the cell. That is, positive concentration will get increased. Whenever this sodium concentration will be increased, the alternate pathway for this efflux of sodium is through the sodium calcium ATPase. So, whenever the sodium concentration is increased, because of action of digitalis and sodium potassium ATPases, these calcium cannot pump this sodium. This alternate pathway for this sodium is to travel from this. It will travel from through the sodium calcium ATPases, but this calcium do not allow this sodium. Ultimately, there will be increase of sodium. If there is no outflow of sodium, then there will be no outflow of calcium also. Ultimately, there will be accumulation of calcium. There will be accumulation of calcium inside the cell. There will be accumulation of calcium inside the cell and sodium inside the cell. As there is excessive of calcium, it will triggers the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Excess amount of calcium will triggers the sarcoplasmic reticulum. After the triggering of sarcoplasmic reticulum, more amount of calcium will be released. Because of releasing of more amount of calcium, there will be contraction. In this way, it will increase the contractility. This is the function of digitalis. It will increase the contractility by inhibiting the sodium potassium ATPases. This is the first class of drugs that are digitalis. Now, second class of drugs under inotropic drugs are sympathomimetic drugs. Sympathomimetic drugs. It includes dopamine and dobutamine. On every cell, there is a special receptors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Here, this is 7-pass receptor. Now, dopamine will get. Let us consider this is beta-1 adrenergic receptor, which is present on heart. Beta-1 adrenergic receptors. Dopamine will get attached here. Dopamine or dobutamine, anything will get attached here. After the attaching, then this is the external domain and this is the internal domain. Internal domain will get activated. Whenever internal domain will be activated, it will activate G alpha, G beta and G gamma. Whenever it is activated, this beta and gamma will get detached. There will be only alpha protein, that is G stimulatory protein, which is called G stimulatory protein. Now this G stimulatory protein will activate another enzyme. It will activate the another enzyme, that is will activate another enzyme. The name of this enzyme is adenylyl cyclase. Adenylyl cyclase will get activated. Whenever the adenylyl cyclase is activated, the function of this adenylyl cyclase is it converts the ATP into cyclic AMP. It converts the ATP into cyclic AMP. Whenever the cyclic AMP is activated, whenever the cyclic AMP will be activated, this cyclic AMP will open the calcium channels. It will open the calcium channels. This cyclic AMP will open the calcium channels. As a result, calcium will get increased. Calcium concentration inside the cell will get increased. The function of the cyclic AMP is to open the voltage sensitive calcium channels. Whenever these are open, calcium will get entered inside, and this calcium will be entering into this sarcoplasmic reticulum and involves in contraction. And whenever this contraction increases, it is used as positive inotropic drugs, that is dopamine. And we have discussed about, now here there is a accumulation of cyclic AMP. Now this cyclic AMP will convert into AMP. This cyclic AMP will convert into AMP. What is the enzyme which converts the cyclic AMP into AMP means? There is a special enzyme, that is phosphodiesterase This is a special enzyme which converts the cyclic AMP into the AMP. As it converts, cyclic AMP converts into AMP, this AMP cannot activate this or cannot open this calcium channels and cannot enter, the calcium cannot enter into these cells, and ultimately there will be no contraction. So in this way, dopamine and dobutamine are useful in increasing the calcium channels or calcium concentration by activating the G stimulative protein. It will activate adenylyl cyclase. This adenylyl cyclase will convert ATP into cyclic AMP. This cyclic AMP will activate the voltage sensitive calcium channels. Whenever this voltage sensitive calcium channels are activated, calcium influx will be taking place. As the excess amount of calcium is present inside the cell, it will trigger the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Whenever the sarcoplasmic reticulum is activated, it will release the calcium from its sarcoplasmic reticulum, and it will stick attached to this troponin and tropomyosin, and it will get away from this active site, and there will be attachment of heavy chain with light chain, and there will be contraction. It will increase the contractility. But if it left for free, it results in tachycardia. In order to overcome this tachycardia, this cyclic AMP will get converted into AMP with the help of enzyme called phosphodiesterase. Whenever this cyclic AMP is converted into AMP, this AMP cannot activate this this calcium channels. Ultimately, if this AMP cannot activate these calcium channels, there is no influx of calcium ions. If there is no influx of calcium ions, there is no activation of sarcoplasmic reticulum, and there is no activation of contraction. Now, this phosphodiesterase enzyme is acting as negative ionotropic drug. Negative ionotropic drug. it is negative inotropic drug. Now we have discussed about first one digitalis, we have completed about sympathomimetic drugs, and next one is phosphodiesterase inhibitors. Phosphodiesterase inhibitors. Phosphodiesterase inhibitors. Phosphodiesterase inhibitors includes two drugs. First one is ambrinon and second one is milrinon. Ambrinon and milrinon, these are the special two drugs. The function of these drugs is it will inhibit this phosphodiesterase. It will inhibit this phosphodiesterase. If this phosphodiesterase is inhibited, the cyclic AMP cannot convert into AMP. If the cyclic AMP is remained free, it will open the voltage sensitive calcium ions. Whenever these voltage sensitive calcium ions are open, then there will be influx of calcium ions. As there is influx of calcium ions, and then there will be activation of sarcoplasmic reticulum and there will be contraction. In this way, these phosphodiesterase inhibitors are useful. Now, let us, if we discuss about the side effects of positive inotropic drugs, that is digitalis. If we discuss the side effects, the first side effect is GIT irritation. This is the first side effect, that is gastrointestinal irritations. It includes vomitings, and second one, it includes cardiac effect. It includes cardiac effect. It may release to sinus tachycardia, sinus bradycardia, or atrial tachycardia, or atrial bradycardia, and it includes third side effect. It includes central nervous system. It shows its effect on CNS. It will show its effects on CNS. And if there is toxicity of digitalis, how the toxicity will be occurred because of digitalis means there will be, first one is if we discuss about the toxicity, there will be competition. First condition for toxicity is if there is hypokalemia. If there is hypokalemia, that is, if there is decrease of calcium ions, then it will compete with this digitalis. It results in drug toxicity. And second one is hypercalcemia. And third one is ischemia. These are the three conditions which results in drug toxicity. In this way, these are the positive inotropic drugs which are working on congestive cardiac failure.